our council as facilitators for the day, Dr. Percy, Kosa, and AK Poku. Thank you so much for dedicating this time to educate us. Let's another 5 minutes, and then we can all begin formally. Okay. Joining us for, right, thank you for joining us for one of the programs scheduled for the MOBA-Gey 2003 August activities. These activities are especially unique to us because it also marks our 20th anniversary since we graduated from our respective schools. We always use the month of August to touch on topics that are current and profitable to us. And this year, as part of our first virtual series, we are discussing the opportunities one can obtain from North America, being Canada and America, respectively, United States. In all things that we do, it's important that we use professionals and the correct subject matter experts. So presenting for us first is AK Poku, who is our little sister from the 2004 Wesley Girls 2004 year group. And what I'd like to say is that I went to ask around that I wanted somebody that had this topic at heart. And I think out of 4 people that I asked, 3 of them came back with your name. I did not know at that time that you were Gey 2004. It was the last person that said, our little sister 2004. And I was like, and I mean, trying to round. So a lot of people have, validated the work that you do, and we are happy to have you. And presenting in the next 45 minutes as well will be Dr. Percy and Percy Kosa, who also happens to be our husband, which is an even more critical, important post than everything else. He's supported by a brother of ours, Kweku Folsen, from the MOBA 2003 year group, who will be presenting on our Canada series. So not to waste too much time, we'll start with an opening prayer, which I will also go ahead and give. Let us all close our eyes and then share a prayer. Father, Lord, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for a moment such as this. We thank you for a moment of learning. We thank you for our facilitators. We thank you for our brothers and sisters that have gathered here to obtain information for the next phases of our lives. We pray that the proceedings are smooth, understandable, that our speakers are able to deliver to meet the questions that we have in our hearts. We all are aware of what the situation is in Ghana and wherever we may find ourselves. And any hardworking person, any visionary, forward-thinking person will find this engagement series very, very important. And we pray that you open our hearts and our minds to benefit of it absolutely, and everything that we do will be to your glory. In Jesus' name have we prayed with thanksgiving. Amen. So, AK, please carry on.
Thank you very much, Ajwa. I thank you so much for that introduction, and thank all of you organizers for putting together this wonderful program. A special thanks also to Miss Boatima, who has organized and assisted me to be on here today. So I'm very excited to discuss this topic. As you all may know, I am an attorney licensed in Ghana and in the U.S. as well. And in the U.S., I chose to focus my practice on helping immigrants who are already here, and then immigrants who also want to come into the U.S. So I don't have any speech prepared for today, but I'm just going to touch on, we don't have too much time, so I'll touch on the main ways through which you can actually relocate to the U.S. So first of all, I want to say this. I tell many of the people I speak with, sometimes what you need, you don't need a million ways to do something. You just need one effective way to do that thing so that the thing actually succeeds. And so from everything we're going to say, don't worry about finding 10 ways or 15 ways. You just need that one way so that you can actually maximize the potential of you being able to immigrate to the United States. Now, to begin, I'm sure many of us studied economics, and in economics, we learned one major theory, which is when demand exceeds supply, then obviously the price of the product or the good or the service will go really high, right? So it's beyond argument that the United States is the number one choice of country for immigrants all around the world because of the American dream, right? If you work hard, play by the rules, dream big, do everything that you're supposed to do, then it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't matter what your name sounds like, or it doesn't even matter what you look like, you will succeed. And that's the magic of the American dream. Like, the systems are there to support you and to push you. So everybody wants to come into the US. And it will surprise you further to know that my office gets calls all the time from people based in Canada, who are Canadians, who are Europeans, who are, British citizens, Germans, like all around the world, and they want to come to America. And I sometimes ask them, but you're already in such a developed country, why do you want to come to America? They can't put a finger on it. It's just this je ne sais quoi, right? It's just the American dream. It's just so appealing. And friends, it's actually a reality. It's a dream, but it can become a reality for you. So without going into all the all the excitement of America, let's just get started. So as I mentioned to you, there's just more people who want to come into the US than there are available spaces to receive them, right? Those of you here may know, when you go into Walmart and the whole world is here, we won't be able to shop. So they have to make sure that at each point in time, there's a quota that will allow a certain number of people to come into the US. Now, every year, the US Department of State has said that we can only give out about 240,000 green cards to family-based immigrants, and I believe about 160,000 to employment-based immigrants every year. And so, based on the fact that there's not too much space to accept the whole world into the US, the US government has, through its immigration laws, they have stipulated specific ways through which you can come legally into the US. And there are not many ways. The gatekeeping done is very, very high, and it's tight. And so if you don't qualify through one of the ways, then it will be very hard to come into the US. Okay, so we have two different categories of visas if you are trying to come into the United States. The first type of visa category is the immigrant visa category. Then the second type is the non-immigrant visa category. The immigrant visa category just means that you're coming into the United States permanently on a permanent basis. So once you come in, you get your green card, and then you can work, travel, and live freely in the United States. The second visa category is known as the non-immigrant visa category. And under this visa category, we have several visa types, right? So we have the B2 visa, or the tourist visa, which is a very popular type of visa. We have the F1 visa, which is a visa for students, M, J, and we sometimes call it the alphabet soup, because you can find all the letters of the alphabet, I believe only with the exception of X, Y, and Z. You can find all visa types from A to B to C to D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, and even V, and W as well. So I can talk about all these visa categories, but that will just be too much. So we're just going to touch on a few important things so that hopefully you can leave with one or two lessons. Okay, so when you come into the United States as well, there are four types of immigrants. We have the U.S. citizens, we have the lawful permanent residents who are green card holders, and then we have non-immigrants, those who are here to school, those who are here for vacation, those who are here working for a multinational company, and then we have the undocumented people. The undocumented people, they came in usually with a visa and they have overstayed their visas, or they came in illegally without a visa through the borders, the Mexico border or whatever other border. Some jump walls, they swim through rivers just to come into the US. So if you are in that category, you are undocumented. And obviously that category is the most difficult category to belong, because you don't have too many rights. Okay, so now let's go through we have generally about, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, generally about 8 ways through which you can get an immigrant visa, which is the first type of visa category that I mentioned. So first of all, you can actually come into the US through your family. I know many people, as for the family, everybody knows that you need to have, either you have a husband who is a US citizen or a husband who is a green card holder, and then they can file for you to get a green card. Also, take note, even with the non-immigrant visa categories, if you are the spouse of sometimes a primary visa holder who's on a non-immigrant visa, you can get some status to be in the US. For example, if your husband is studying, he's doing his master's, he's pursuing his master's, he has an F1 for that reason, then as a spouse or a minor child of that F1 visa holder, you can be given an F2 as a dependent of that F1. Okay, so green card through family, we have, again, 2 different types of categories. We have the immediate relative category. Immediate relative just means obviously your parents, then your spouse, and then your minor children. Those are the people that can benefit from somebody filing for them. And then we have the preference immigrants category, sibling of a US citizen, then a spouse of a green card holder, then married or unmarried children of US citizens. Okay, so first off, green card through family, that is actually the easiest, most simple route. It's very quick to be able to get status through this. And now I get people ask me all the time, okay, can I pay someone and then they will be my husband and then they can file for me? And now I tell them that, well, you may hear a lot of people say that's how they got status in the US. That's how they got their green cards, and that's how they got their US citizenship. And this was in the past, right? And unfortunately, or fortunately, there have been many Ghanaians and other citizens from other African countries and other even European countries who have done this. It's not legal, as you may know, but in addition to it not being legal, these days, the US government, they've learned about all the strategies and all the tricks. We've had several green card, marriage fraud schemes, and that have taken up great space in the media. And so they've done a lot of investigations. They've caught a lot of Ghanaians and even other African countries. And then those people have shown them all the methods and all the strategies that they used. So these days, the US government, they can smell a marriage fraud scheme from afar. Well, you may be able to get away with it, but it's become increasingly difficult. And so that's not something I recommend, because it's a highly, highly stressful process to go through. And so if you have a family member in the US and it's a spouse, it has to be what's known as bona fide. That's how the US immigration defines it. Bona fide means that you have the intention to actually establish life together with a person. Okay, so I won't dwell too much on the family. Let's move on to the green card through employment. So the employment-based route is also a very, very viable route, but it's also complex. That's one of the things about Americans. Everything they do seems very simple, but the more you go into it, the more you realize how complicated it is, and nothing is really ever simple in the US. You'll see them in their sneakers, t-shirts. They look like a very simple people, but they are very complex. Okay, so under employment base, we have the EB1 for people of extraordinary ability. That's like if you are the Einstein of your field, you've ever won a Grammys or an Oscars, like the top of the top, extraordinary. Then of EB1, we even have 3 types: EB1A, EB1B for outstanding professors and researchers, EB1C for multinationals of certain companies. Then we have EB2, if you are somebody of an exceptional ability, not extraordinary, exceptional ability. And the law defines all these things differently. Even under exceptional ability, you could also be somebody of, you have an advanced degree, and then a company wants to sponsor you for a green card. Under the EB2, We also have the EB2 NIW, National Interest Waiver. For those people, they can petition by themselves. They don't need an employer. But generally, you have to have a proposed endeavor, which could be a project or a business venture that you're coming to carry out or execute in the US. And this business venture has such substantial merit and national importance. You are well positioned to advance that endeavor, and it's in the interest of the United States to waive not only the job offer requirement, but also the labor certification requirement. So let me explain a little more. Under the employment base, right, they don't want people complaining, like US citizens and green card holders complaining, oh, immigrants are taking up our jobs. Why are you giving jobs to immigrants? You can't, we are here, we are unemployed, and immigrants are coming in and taking our jobs. So when you are doing an employment-based petition, right, the employer who generally wants to petition for you or sponsor you has to file an application to the U.S. Department of Labor. And during this application, they have to, let the U.S. government know that they couldn't find anybody in the United States who was willing, able, and qualified to do the specified role. And you are the person that can actually, fill that role. Okay, so this is really done by the U.S. Department of Labor to protect the integrity of the labor market in the U.S. And what they also don't want to do is that, you see, if companies could just go outside and bring people in the U.S., into the U.S., like immigrants, and pay them even $5 an hour, there will be so many immigrants who will come for a green card, right? Even for $2 an hour, people will come. People will break down the doors of the United States and say, hire me for 50 cents an hour, right? But there's a minimum wage. The US has a minimum wage. I don't know what, every state is different. I believe generally about $13 an hour. And so if you're trying to bring in an immigrant, you have to go through a process and let the US Department of Labor know that you are willing to pay the prevailing wage for that particular job type. You see, so that it's not like, oh, because there's a minimum wage for United States citizens, you are going into Ghana to bring people to do jobs and then you pay them 50 cents an hour. Then that's just not going to work. Nobody's going to employ US citizens. So all these rules are there to protect the US economy. And so under the national interest waiver, once you have that proposed endeavor, then you are telling the US that, look, do away with a job offer that I need as an immigrant. I need a job offer from a US employer, and that I need a labor certification. That process of, saying that, oh, we're going to pay this person prevailing wage. We couldn't find anybody in the US, and so we're going for the immigrant. It's a prevailing wage. It's a labor certification. You said, you certify the labor. So they have to go through all this. And so under the national interest waiver, you are exempt from going through the job offer and the labor certification requirements if you have some endeavor that the US would really, really benefit from. As I mentioned, it has to have substantial merit and national importance, obviously, to the US economy. And then we have under the EB, also we have EB3. Under the EB3, it could be for professionals, it could be for skilled workers, and it could also be for untrained labor, work that doesn't require it doesn't require much training under the EB3. But again, there's something known as a visa bulletin, another, complex area, because of all these quotas, right? They have to make sure that once you file any application, you are given something known as a priority date, and the visa bulletin will tell you, so the priority date is your place in line to get a green card. And so what happens is that when most of these categories, such as EB3, because there's just so many people, remember that we mentioned EB1 for extraordinary people. Extraordinary people are not that many in the world, right? So for those type of visa categories, the line moves very fast because there are very few extraordinary people. If everybody was in top 1%, then there'll be no need to have that. But the EB3, everybody fits in there. You can get a job. It doesn't matter what your skills are. I mean, well, it should be aligned with the company who's hiring you's needs. But essentially, you don't need to be top of the top, cream of the cream. So the lines are very long. And so you have to look at the visa bulletin, look at your priority date and see when. Sometimes some of the cases can take about even several years. I would just say several years. The visa bulletin changes every month. depending on how things are progressing. Okay, so that's the EB, employment base. And then obviously we have the EB4, then we have the EB5. The EB4 they even have under that religious workers. So if you can work for a non-profit organization as a religious worker, and you can get a green card through that process. And then also EB5, if you have about $1.1 million to invest in the US economy, or about $800,000, then you can come to the US as an EB5 investor. Okay, so that's under the EB category. Then we have the special immigrant category, and under this we have several categories. I'll just touch on two. Special immigrant juveniles are minors or young people, like who are below the ages of about 18 years old and who have been abused, neglected, or abandoned. They can get green cards through the fact that they've been abused, neglected, or abandoned, and they become dependent on a court. And then the visa lottery falls under this category. So every year, between the months of October and November, every year, the U.S. Department of State will organize a random drawing. It's just like a big magic hat. All the names of the people who apply in the world are in that hat, and then they'll draw out 100,000 selectees. And then if you win, obviously you don't win $1 million, but you win the chance to become an American. Again, the American dream, right? The visa lottery. So every year, that's also, but because of how, even after 100,000 people are selected, they bring it down to 50,000, just 50,000. And even 50,000, so many people are disqualified. And so in essence, less people get it, but that's also a great way. Just that if you look at like the 20 million people who are applying all around the world, you don't really, you may not be selected. Okay, so that's really by luck. And then green card through asylum, if you are being persecuted by your home country because you belong to a particular social group, based on your political affiliation, or based on your race or your religion, or you belong to a particular social group, like you're a transgender or gay, and you're being persecuted. And then there are green cards for people who are victims of crimes, qualifying crimes, and it depends on where the crime was committed, where you are. If you can help the US government solve that crime, then they're willing to give you a green card. As for the US, let me tell you, everything we are saying, I feel like the US is just like us human beings, right? Everybody wants where there's a benefit. And so the US also, well, even if you're undocumented, guys, they will waive the fact that you're undocumented, or they'll forgive you for that fact just because you want to help them solve crime. They are very happy to give you a green card. So it's an exchange for something. And remember, as I even mentioned with the EBs, the employment base, they want people with skills, like great skills. Like, what are you bringing to the table? That famous question, what do you bring to the table? If you have $1 million and you're bringing $1 million to the table, hell yeah, we're ready to give you a green card. So it's what they can get out of you, if you look at it that way. So if you are willing to help them solve a crime, then they'll be willing to also compensate you through a green card. And then there are green cards for victims of abuse. Let's say you're here in the US, and then you get married to someone, a US citizen, and then he abuses you and he's not willing to help you file VAWA. We have the VAWA and other categories. Okay, now let's go through the green card through registry. Many people don't qualify. If you've been here in the US continuously since before January 1st, 1972, then you can get a green card through the registry method, okay? Okay, so enough about those categories. Let's move on to something more. Remember, guys, in the introduction, I was telling you that you don't need all the 500 ways to come into the US. You just need one that will work. So if you find that, I don't even qualify under any of these methods, you shouldn't lose hope, right? Because you can come as a student. For example, you're coming to pursue a master's program, or you're coming to, so the F is for if you're pursuing an academic program, and then M is for non-academic, like culinary school or something like that. Then the J visa is also a student, but it's for cultural exchange. If you're coming to be an intern or a scholar or a researcher, J visa. Now, one of the things I see that, makes it really hard for people, let's say, for example, the F visa, you have to demonstrate a number of things, right? The F1 visa, and I know many of you may qualify because you're all, you may have all been to high school and perhaps the university. So if you're coming into the US, you want to, as a student, you want to show the consular officer that, to begin with, you don't even start with the visa aspect. You have to obviously do your research, make sure you find a school in a state and the course of study that really, really aligns with what you have done in the past, what you're doing in the present, and what you intend to do in the future. So you have to feel very connected to the school. Don't just randomly apply to any school and then just because you want to come to the US, right? So do your research well. And then once you get the school, of course, the funding thing is also a problem because some people are unable to get funding, and for that reason, they don't get the visa. So you have to make sure that you can pay the fees, or you have somebody, a company or a family member who can support you, or even your own organization or some grant or some scholarship that can show that they are interested in, helping you come into the US. Now, once you have a good school, a school that you want, then you apply obviously for your visa. Once you're applying for your visa, they're looking at a number of things. The first one is that you are coming into the US to pursue a course of study, right? So they don't want people just, and how they're able to find, some people are not really interested. I tell you, people come all the time, and as soon as they come, look, they don't even step foot in the school they claim they were going to, right? Their school is in New York. By the time they land in Boston, they're already in Ohio. They never even see the school. So the US government, they know about all these things because the school will report, the DSO will report to ICE. If you don't show up within, I believe, 30 days of the school start program, they file those reports. So they have all the data. So they know exactly where you are, that you didn't show up. They want to avoid people coming into the US, you are coming as a student and then now you are working or doing something else. They don't want that. So they want to make sure that you are actually coming to the school to pursue a full course of study. And then as part of the F1 also, you have to show that you are, you've been admitted into a school that has been able to issue you with an I-20, an SEVP certified school. So not all schools in the US are created equal. Some schools are unable to issue you with an I-20. Some schools, on the other hand, they can accept international students, and you can actually use the I-20 to get the visa. Then one of the third requirements is that you should have present intent to leave the US at the end of your studies. I was just discussing this with a group of lawyers yesterday, and I told them, all the people that I have met that are here in the US to study, I haven't met even one person who says, oh, immediately after my studies, I'm going back to Ghana. Never. Everybody wants, oh, lawyers are where I can get a job. How do I get status? I mean, there's no one single precedent. Believe me, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of immigrants. And so listen, all the people want, unless of course you have some very, very, very major role in Ghana, maybe in the government or some company, and then you are coming to do the course to go back to impact. Those ones are very far and few between, but generally people just want to be here. But that's one of the qualifying criteria. If you're coming here, you must have present intent at the time of your visa to return to your home country. Here's another crucial area. So you have to be able to choose the school you're going to properly, choose the course you're going to study, so that you can show them that it's connected with something you are currently doing in Ghana, or a vision you have, for Ghana. So if you are, I'm just coming up with this example randomly. Let's say if you are coming into the US to pursue a master's in education, because you love, maybe you want to educate, you want to help children. In the past, perhaps you've opened a library program, like a non-profit library program in your home, where you have about 5 children after school. You help them do their homework, you help them to read, you've gotten a container, and these children can sit in and read. You have books that have been donated. You are running this program in your community, and you have evidence of all this, everything you guys do. And then, for example, such a person gets admission into a school to learn about education, child education, or a master's, to pursue a master's in child education. That person is more likely to convince a U.S. immigration officer that they're really going to come back because of the initiative they began in their own home country. And then you could have the dream of, you know what, I want to open one of the biggest libraries in West Africa, and this is a novel idea. Maybe in our library system, maybe we're a mobile library, and so we'll go around the city on a container with wheels, and then just be giving children books, we'll be reading, whatever. I just came up with this very fantastical idea, but you get the point, right? So if you are choosing your school, you need to choose a school that really, really aligns with what you've been doing, and that you can connect with, and that can help you implement your goals or your dreams in the future. Okay, and then obviously you should also be able to show that you have the funds. Fourth requirement for F1 visa, show you have the money to be able to foot your bills. So one of the things I see why people get denied is that they don't go into these visa interviews well prepared. They don't go into you see, getting a US visa is a very big deal. It's a very big deal. You don't take it for granted. Even for people who have been issued visas in the past, it's still a big deal, because once the US decides to deny you a visa, all other countries, once you are denied a visa, there's a way to appeal. A non-immigrant visa, there's a way to appeal. Germany, UK, Canada, there's an appeal process. The Schengen visas, there are appeal processes. For the US, there is no appeal process. It's final. Once you are denied a US non-immigrant visa, it's final. Of course, there are some exceptions where there's a misapplication or misinterpretation of US. So once there's a misinterpretation, so once there is a misinterpretation or misapplication of U.S. immigration law, then there is a way to challenge that decision through, that's another thing, I won't discuss it, but generally, there's no appeal process. Once you are denied a visa, it's final. And the famous 214B denial, right? Many people have gotten it. So those type of denials stem from a lack of preparation, a lack of understanding of what you are supposed to present. And again, I say this, many people may not have the vocabulary or the skills to articulate their own rights as they are supposed to be articulated. And it's all the way you present your case, you see, because you, first of all, if you don't even know the law, how do you know you're falling within the law? People just fly blind. They just throw applications, do things together. They just throw things together and then submit and say, okay, I'm going to apply for a visa. For example, I had somebody that consulted with with me, I believe some few months ago. This person has, I think she came in on a tourist visa to the US B2 visa. She was trying to change her status to an F1 visa as a student. So from tourist to student. And she filed the change of application herself, change of status. When she filed it, her application was denied, and that was when she contacted us. So when I went through her application, I found one major error, and I told her that, okay, so one of the things they asked on I believe on the change of status application was that where's your permanent address, or where's your residence, or whatever. And if you're changing to F1, she actually put an address in Maryland, that's her permanent home or permanent address. I can't remember the wording. And that right there was a red flag. If you say you're an F1, one of the criteria is that you don't intend to stay in the US permanently. You have a residence abroad that you don't intend to abandon, and you will leave at the end of your trip. So she should have used her Ghanaian address or her whichever address, outside the US. And so there were a few red flags, and obviously you may not know, you may not avert your mind to it, because you obviously it just may not come within your contemplation. But there are some very minor and major errors that people make because they don't understand what they are doing. Once you are applying for any US immigration benefits, also there's a standard of proof. There is the burden of proof. I'm sure you guys have heard it before. if you are accused of crime, let's say you're accused of shooting someone, and any government, it's a common law principle, legal principle everywhere, and any government wants to, you know, take you to jail, you are presumed innocent until they are able to prove you guilty or prove that you are guilty, right? So the burden of proof in the criminal case is on the prosecutor, the criminal prosecutor, not on you. You are the innocent, but you are accusing me. Prove it. Prove your case before you can take me to jail. And the standard of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. It's a 99% probability that, look, nobody else but this man killed the deceased. Because you are going to deprive somebody of liberty, right? So if you're depriving somebody of liberty, you better prove yourself or prove your case to the highest standard. Now, when you're applying for a U.S. immigration benefit, generally, the burden of proof is not on the U.S. government. It's on you, the benefit requester. So number one, you, the applicant, the burden is entirely on you to prove that you actually are eligible for the U.S. immigration benefit you are seeking, not the U.S. government. They don't care. They're even looking to deny you. You don't prove your case, bam, denied, you're out. And so, you know, once you understand that the burden of proof is on you, you need to know that when you're going into a U.S. immigration interview, you need to go there prepared and ready to demonstrate that you have to grant me this visa before I leave here because I qualify under U.S. immigration law. 1, check, I qualify. 2, check, I qualify. 3, check. They're not going to teach you these things. So you have to really prepare. And the standard of proof generally, again, for U.S. immigration applications is by a preponderance of the evidence. By preponderance of the evidence is a 50% likely, it's a 50% chance that what you are saying is likely to be true, right? So you are not required to show beyond reasonable doubt that, oh, you are going to study in the U.S. No, by a preponderance of the evidence, it's a 50% chance that, oh, this person, he actually qualifies. So once you know all these things, then you need to prepare your application ready to. I had someone tell me that, oh, lawyer, they denied me when I went, you know, I was waiting for them to, you know, to ask me more questions and I'll show. And the person didn't really ask me. She just said something and then she just denied me. I'm like, listen, you also have to be proactive, right? Once you understand your case, you understand your own story, you should really, really prepare. There are ways in which you should say certain things. There's how you comport yourself. It's a whole lot of, it's a number of elements coming together to ensure that the officer is very convinced about the, you know, your purpose for coming into the US. The other thing I also see with many people is that, guys, there are people that they've applied in the past 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 15 years ago, and they stated all kinds of things on their visa applications. Once you go in subsequently, they will pull up that they don't care. 50 years, 50 years, 100 years, they have all those records. I have people tell me that, oh, they said 10 years, every 10 years, the US government wipes their data clean. That's not true. They have them there written on stone. So please, you have to remember that if you are going to submit anything, you cannot say that, oh, in 1999, I was married. Now you are single, never been married. What happened to that old marriage, right? So if you've been married, the next cause of action should be a divorce, you know, or a divorce that ended in maybe death or a legal divorce. So you cannot go submitting contradictory information about yourself, one human being, right? So those are some of the things. And there's a way to pull up all your records from the U.S. Embassy to see what you've previously ever submitted. Very important. And again, cross applications. If you're applying to Canada, I've had people, like other countries, I've had people tell me, I applied to Canada, I said I was married. I applied to the US, I said I was single. They actually pulled up and said you went to Canada and stated that you were married. So they are actually sharing data and information. So please don't go singing different songs about yourself to different embassies. It's in the interest of all these governments and countries to actually share data because they want to prevent, you know, terrorism. They want to make sure that, you know, spies and all these type of people, they are all combating many of these. All right, guys. So what other thing? Let me see if there's any other thing I have here. And again, if you have, you know, for example, in Ghana, there's a lot of people that mount canopies, and then they'll say, oh, we apply for visa lottery for you. I attended the University of Ghana, Legon, And I believe I remember that sometime where I was working with a friend of mine and we're passing under a tree. And there was a man who called us and said, oh, he's doing visa lottery. And we also want to give our information. Oh my God, how dangerous. If I know now if I knew. So at the time, I just didn't know what I know now. If I had known, I wouldn't have done that, because it's just so dangerous, because these people take your information and then send it into the US government system. And I've had people again who have called me and they said, you know what, I applied, and they said, did you ever apply for the visa lottery, let's say in 2002? They said no, and they were denied under section 212A6CI of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which says that if you misrepresent information about yourself, or you commit fraud, meaning there's a material misrepresentation, then you are denied under that section of law, which is a permanent bar to ever entering the US. And they later found out that their dad gave their details to some visa agent to apply on their behalf, and they had no idea. And the officer thought they were lying. So this is a big problem, right? So don't give your information to people to apply for you. You have to be proactive. Take a center stage in your own immigration application. Know exactly who is submitting, so that you will not go into the US embassy and your information is flying all around and you've already been red flagged, So be careful of that. Also, I've had people who gave birth in the US on a B2 visa using Medicaid or charity, likely to be a public charge. You will be barred under section 212A4 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, because they don't want people who are a burden on the taxpayer, right? So if you come and take public or the taxpayers' money to pay for your medical bills, the next time you're trying to come in, if they don't stop you at the US embassy by refusing you a visa, once you get to the port of entry, CBP at the international airport, you are likely to get barred or banned if you meet an officer who is very, very, some people get away with it. I won't lie to you. I have many people, they get away with it. Tell me, oh, nothing has happened. That's fine. You could get away with it, but several other people are also prevented from entering into the US in the future. So I'll tell you another story. Somebody also contacted me. I think she's in Europe somewhere. She's working with one of the major organizations, and she had gotten an admission into a wonderful Ivy League school. They've paid for everything. She went for the visa interview. I believe it was in Switzerland. And when she got there, the visa officer approved everything and said, come for your visa on, it was a Tuesday, come for your visa on Friday or whatever. And then immediately he said that he was like, oh, hold on. I think he had tried, what he realized was that apparently the girl had given birth several years ago in the US and hadn't paid for her medical bills. And the officer just saw it when he was about to approve her case and everything, and told her, unfortunately, he's unable to issue her the visa because she has the inadmissibility bar due to public charge, right? So, that's just so many things that can affect your chances of coming into the US, your past application, even the present one, as I mentioned, lack of a thorough preparation, and just being adequately organized and knowing exactly what you're going in for. If I'll be permitted a couple more minutes, let me just round up. I know the time is very short, but it's fine. If you are also trying to come into the US, you have to remember that there are skills that you should start equipping yourself with. It's not just about, oh, I want to come to the US, come to the US. You don't have transferable skills. If you're in a profession, let's say you're an accountant, you know that, okay, there are certain exams that you need to do in the US. If you're a lawyer, your Ghana bar, it won't work here, right? You should be able to transfer some of the skills and then be able to get, if you're a nurse, if you are a medical doctor, there are licensing exams that you have to take in order to become employable in the US. And even if you are not in any of these professions, there are really, really great skills these days. IT skills, cybersecurity, cyber audits, just a lot of all these skills, nursing skills. There are just so many. So those are things that you want to start doing, because in order to come to the US, you want to make sure that you have, once you get here, you will be able to thrive, right? So you learn all these skills, and you also have to save a lot of money, because trying to immigrate into the US takes money. It's not a cheap process. Once you even come in, you will be shot all the way back for sometimes as long as several years before you can launch forward, right? Just like an arrow, you pull back and then you launch forward. Once you come in and you're trying to settle in, there's a lot of things that will happen to you. There's a lot of challenges. It's not rosy at all. It's very, very challenging. Coming is is one ball game, and being here is a different ball game. No matter how many times you've come here, once you come in and you're coming to actually live here, there's always a culture shock. There's always a shock. There's always, it can get very destabilizing if you don't have the right support system. So Adjo, I think I've said enough. Thank you guys very much for your attention.
All right, thank you so much, AK. There are so many things that you said. The one that really scared me is you saying that these third-party facilitators and you not being in charge of what you are sending out there, and the fact that these countries know, like, they know what they represent, and that Canada can check from the US and US can also check from Canada, and that's we all used to think that after 5 years they claim their data and they start afresh. So it is not so. It's not so. And I thank you so much for this eye-opening, presentation. There's so much that we take for granted. We hear from our friends. Somebody who deals with that specifically. Please do not log off. We are giving our Canadian facilitators another 45 minutes. And the questions, please, you can leave the questions in the messages so that AK can start preparing to answer them, whilst we bring Dr. Percy Kosa and our brother Wilson to present on the series. Please put your questions in the messages so that we can all answer it at the end of the meeting. AK with us.
Sorry, okay, I have a question for you, please. Before you go, if someone has a child in United States, an underage, and does that qualify that person to come to United States, or until when that child can get to a certain age that can file for that person? How does it work?
Okay, thank you for your question. So guys, let me issue this caveat. So this is not legal advice, right? It's general education. One thing about the law is if you know anybody who's ever sat in a law classroom or who has ever pursued legal education, the most popular answer to every question is it depends. It always depends, right? You may have, okay, this is what the law says, but its application to your life. The law is not a one size fits all. Application varies a lot. Okay, so that's just a caveat. Please, I won't go into specifics of cases. I'll just give general education. Now, number one, based on the 14th Amendment, there's birthright citizenship. Anybody that is delivered on U.S. soil, whether the mother is a U.S. citizen, undocumented, a green card holder, regardless of their citizenship, generally that baby will become a U.S. citizen just by virtue of the fact that they were born on U.S. soil. That's a principle of jus soli. So if you gave birth to a child here, you are not a U.S. citizen, your child is likely a U.S. citizen. Now, they can only file an immigration application for you once they turn 21 years old, and obviously they are adults and can decide for themselves that they want to petition for their parents. Until then, there's no direct U.S. immigration benefits for you as a parent. I have people who tell me, oh, but lawyer, my child is a U.S. citizen. As a mother, don't I have a right to come and live here so that my child can go to school? No, you don't, right? You cannot get that benefit just because your child is a U.S. citizen. You have to wait until the child turns 21 and then they can file for you. Okay.
Hello, I have a question, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm driving and I'm sure the network will go, but I have to stop to ask this question. If you may permit me to ask this question.
And please, this very last one, and then we have to carry on with the if you can ask the question, she will answer this, and then we'll have our Canadian series, please.
Thank you very much. So my name is Martin, and I have a green card for more than 9 years now. I've been traveling back and forth because I was working in Ghana, and it was difficult relocating here. And finally, I decided to move here, but then I think I don't have enough time spent in this country to qualify for the application. So I decided to stay a year or two more to apply. And I wanted to find out, does it really matter how long I've been here or not? And also, do I necessarily have to wait till I'm 30 plus months or 3 years or all those things that people say before I can apply for my citizenship?
Okay, so if you want to apply for U.S. citizenship, there are generally two methods. There are two eligibility categories. Number one, if you've been married to a U.S. citizen and you've had a green card for 3 years, then you can apply for U.S. citizenship under the 3-year rule. Now, under the 5-year rule, you can apply based on your own by yourself, right? And this means that you've been a lawful permanent resident for the last 5 years. Now, if you're applying based on the 3-year rule, 3 years of being a green card holder, by virtue of the fact that you are married to a U.S. citizen, you have to demonstrate physical presence of at least half of the eligibility period. So 1.5 years of the last 3 years immediately preceding your application, you should have physical presence in the United States. And if you're applying because you've been a green card holder for the last 5 years, you should have half of that, 2.5 years, out of the last 5 years of physical presence. Physical presence means you have been here for, if they count the number of days, you have 2.5 years out of the 5 years. There are obviously other rules under citizenship, like the continuous presence. You cannot spend more than 6 months at a time outside the US. And obviously all this has to be within the statutory period, within the last 5 years or last 3 years, depending on the basis for your eligibility. So I have to see the numbers, I have to see your travel dates, and then I'll be able to help you. But generally, you have to satisfy 2.5 years. If you're doing the 5-year period, you have to satisfy 1.5 years if you're doing the 3-year period.
Okay, so please drop all the US questions in the messages, and then AK can study it and group it in like items so that she can answer a bunch of questions together. So she'll be paying attention to that. Mr. Kweku Folson and Dr. Kosa, please, are you with us, please?
Sitting right here.
Perfect. So please, let's go. It's Canada time.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It feels very heated. Sorry, I had to come out into my car so that I can get away from the noise of the kids. So we structured this into a bit of an informal overview, and then we have a little presentation as well. And everything that has been said for US applies for Canada, right? That's what I'm going to say. So the very first important thing is there's history to Canadians' immigration. The onset of Ghanaians into Canada was actually from the 70s, and very few people knew about it. And at that time, because of Commonwealth, we didn't need visas. In that, all you needed was to buy your plane ticket, and then they give you the visa on arrival or at the airport. And a lot of our older parents came in and settled, and they are the buggers of today. And when UK stopped allowing a lot of Ghanaians to come in and other Commonwealth members, the next best country was Canada. So a lot of pressure came, and people were slowly denied visas. Back then, all you have to do is come in, go to the post office, get a SIN number, express interest, get interviewed, and you have a PR card, which is our version of the green card, in a month or two. And this slowly changed over time. But the factor that drove immigration hasn't changed. What I mean is, Canada is the second largest country in the world. Canada is far bigger than US, but we're Ghana's population. Canada just hit 40 million people in June. Ontario, which is my province, is 10 times the size of Ghana. and Ontario is the most populated province. It has about 14 million people today. So Canada needs people to drive the economy. Other than that, we'll have Europe's problem where it's an inverted pyramid. You have everybody growing old and no one to feed the social system. So immigration is thriving here, both as a business and then as a means to provide the workforce. That means there are so many ways. There are legally 64 ways to get papers. It's the most in any country in the world. US has less than 10. The next largest option is Australia. There's 64 legal ways. You cannot downplay this in any way. Would have Folsom will do a presentation on the main option, which applies to most of you, which is the federal skilled worker. And that has to do with you using your school credentials, or you can see uninterrupted in the background there. The main way is the federal skilled pathway I talked about, where Folsom will be given a presentation on. That is where most people coming in would fit. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention here is, just as was mentioned earlier, this is not legal advice, although this is being recorded. Most of the options require a lot of money or someone here to support you. So not everything can be said on record, right? So feel free, especially Folsom, I'm sure that he'll be happy to hear from you most afterwards, right? There are a lot of things that will not necessarily be said, but it will be implied. And that should mean a whole lot. The pathways for immigration, as I was saying, we have 64 legal ways. The easiest thing to come in with is the federal skilled worker, which is unfortunately for people who have skill sets, which you all do, but the age is the biggest differentiator I'm seeing these days. We're getting the ideal age being pegged between 21 to 33. And I know most people on this platform are older than that. So that reduces your chances a little bit, but it's still one of the best ways. The other options are the standard coming through the educational route, where if you're lucky, you pay nothing. Most people I've dealt with in the past have okay grades. And this is not something that is the fault of the student, but is a Ghanaian problem. And what I mean is that in my class, the class I teach, when students are just okay, if they just show up for classes, they get 70s. Unfortunately, in Ghana, that's what good students get. You have profs bragging how I failed everybody in my class. My course is so tough. If that's the case, you shouldn't be teaching. My good students get 90s. Why we're having this discussion is it costs 4 times the tuition for an international student. But if you're coming in to do any research focused course, example, a master's or a PhD, you don't have to pay. We will pay for you. But if the recruiting prof looks at the grades of a Ghanaian student and sees 60s and 70s, they don't understand it. Because the average students here are getting 80s and 90s. And if it's $10,000 for me to do a master's for 2 years, or $40,000 to do a PhD for 4 years as a Canadian, but for a Ghanaian, it will cost $40,000 for the master's and $200,000 for the PhD, which means you as an international student, you should be worth at least 2 of me because it costs 4 of you. So for most people with regular grades, the best thing you can do to help yourself to get into the system is to use your work experience, your publications, and your scientific flex. Let me put it that way. The things that you have done is what would sell you. So anyone who's thinking of using the educational pathway, unfortunately, you cannot amend your transcript. What you should focus on is how your resume and your academic portfolio is going to be music. Because as I said, with an educational pathway, it is free if you do a research-based program. And the beauty is when you study here, whether you do a postgraduate diploma, a master's degree, a PhD, when you school here minimum 1 year, it gives you a minimum 1 year work permit. When you use a work permit here for 1 year, it gives you access to a permanent residency. So for those who have money in their pocket, colleges are $20,000 a year. You don't need to prove much if you have money for that pathway. That is the cheapest and the fastest way in this age bracket. You come in, sign up in the college, study for 8 months to a year. You have 1 year work permit. After the work permit, you have your permanent residence card or green card. You stay here 3 years, you have a Canadian passport or equal, right? So that is the pathway that applies mostly for the people in this team. But again, there's an economic implication, right? And if your grades are awesome, we can have that conversation. I mean, fortunately, I teach at a number of the colleges. So in the past, I've been able to help a lot of people with admissions for free. I mean, I'm your neighborhood connection man, but we don't do any of this for money, right? So it's just the time. So you just have to bribe my wife to give you some of my time. And those who need the colleges or the universities, we can talk in the background to make that happen. The other options are work related. So for those of you who've been here before or who have dealt with Canadians, you'd realize that our shift is going towards the Asian population. We have a lot more Indians, a lot more Chinese, because they support each other. And what they're mostly doing, so the US and other countries have the same thing, right? Out of the 10 provinces, if you have $500,000 to invest in my province, the cheapest province is 2.5, it's about 250,000. Between 250,000 to 500,000 investment, you get a PR card for you, your family, your team. The Chinese and the Indians put money together and they come in that way. And these same people now employ 20, 30, 40, 50 people. So they don't even have the skill sets you have. Now, with the level of education we have in Ghana, if anyone interested, there are a couple of legal job platforms, even though fraudsters have, been mixed in. If you go and then you look at, what do you call it? Job Bank. There are a few of these resources we'll try and send to Ajwa later to share. Jobbank.ca, Indeed.ca. If you're able to get a job offer from out of country, and one of the best provinces to get a job offer in is Prince Edward Island. Now, the reason why Canada is slow is because our weather sucks. When it's winter, it's super cold. That's why everybody runs to America. We can range between -20 to -60. So those of you who wear your jackets in Ghana when it rains, you need to toughen your skin. And PEI is one of the coldest places. But I talk about PEI because they have a new program called the PEI Critical Worker Stream. What that means is if you get a job in that province, from shelving potatoes to washing baskets to teaching to whatever, there's no criteria for their work. In Ontario, we want skilled workers because everybody wants to be in Ontario. Weather is relatively better. In a place like PEI, any job goes. You run that job for 6 months, not 1 year, 6 months. You can apply for a PR. So within a year, you can get your residence permit in a place like Prince Edward Island, as opposed to Ontario, where you need to work a full year. So most people are struggling to get jobs internationally. Others have created corporations here and are selling the job offers. There are a lot of scams and connection men in this. I usually like to give that. Let's be very, very careful. Anytime you're looking for a job offer that you hear money, you want to do your investigation. Right? Because at the end of the day, these immigration scams are milking people. And people are desperate, so they may pay less attention, right? But you want to watch this. If they 100% let you know that it's the type where they're charging you, so example, the paid ones, there's some legal ones where they charge about 30,000, give you a job, pay you for 6 months, you use that, that's fine. The Indians and Chinese, as I said, are running this. There are a few Africans doing that, but it's not the ideal way, because then you need to put in money. The ideal way is actually to show your skill set and get a legit job offer. And with that legit job offer, you work 6 months to a year, boom, you're in. So the school, as I said, is the fastest if you have money. The next is the work route and I'm giving this advice just based on the cohort of people we have in here, right? So even for the work, I know that there are a lot of people who are not coming in with visitors visas, which is very, very good. Because with the Canadian system, when you are getting a visit visa, your visit visa is valid for the duration of your passport. So I've said it multiple times. If any of you, usually invitations are not the best way to come in. The best is to come in with conferences and businesses. So example, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you look up events happening in Canada, right? There's a health conference, there's a food conference, there's a business summit. Apply, use that to get your visit visa. If you have a 10-year passport, you have a 10-year visa. If you have a 5-year passport, you have a 5-year visa. You can come in for duration of 6 months. Stubborn people come in for 5.5 months. They cross to Barbados for free for 1 day, and that resets their visa for another 6 months, right? And they're doing cash jobs in Toronto and stuff. I never said anyone should do that. I'm just saying it happens. So if you get the drift. Now, those who are doing that eventually save up enough money or find a local employer. So I just had a friend whose siblings are here, and both siblings came on a visitor's visa. One of them is being sponsored by a farm right now. One is being sponsored by the healthcare, personal support worker, right? To get a visitor's visa in between, boom. Because at least with that, you get to experience. And employers are more forthcoming when you are here in person or when they see you. The beauty with North America is, aside all the racial crap and drama, if you show your skill set, these guys can't let you down, right? The moment you show your skill set in here, that one smart black man or one smart person of color, they lead you on. So when you're able to get in the system with a visitor's visa, it definitely boosts your chance for the job. So we've had a few people come in with visitor's visa and still apply to the school as well, and that worked. Most of these rules came in effect during the pandemic. A lot of the lockdown changes, at first you couldn't come in with a temporal visa, a TRV, and then switch to a permanent one. But the pandemic brought these changes, and between now and 2025, people are coming in here and switching to school and work permit legally. So this is a quick overview of the shortcut method. What Folsom is going to do right now is we'll have a quick presentation just to show you what the federal skilled worker route involves. In that same route, there are options where he will talk about schooling here, where you're showing. So when we say federal skilled worker, we're saying that anyone can move into the country with minimum 1 year work experience. And Canada has what we call NOC classification, which talks about the types of jobs. So if you're a doctor, if you're a farmer, if you're a teacher, you get different recognition for the type of work you do. And the beauty is it's not just professionals, right? We're short of construction workers. So that's the skilled trades. Everything you do, there's a route. So we'll just do a presentation on the federal skilled worker option, and that would be general information to run for everybody. And at the end, when we get to the question and answers time, if there are more specific things, we'll see how we'll balance it, because typically in the time frame we have, there's just too much to talk about, but we don't want to overwhelm anyone. So I'll give the floor to my one and only resource person, Kweku Folsom, to come in and give us that beautiful presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Percy. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. I've made slides because it just makes it easier for me to kind of talk through things sequentially. So I'm going to share the slides and then we can take it there. Okay, let's see. Yes. Okay. All right. Please let me know if you can see the slide. So I'm going to be talking about the Federal Skilled Worker Program. Percy has touched on a lot of the aspects of this program, and so I will skip the things that he has touched on so that I do not end up repeating myself. So this, yeah, I put this slide some months ago. So Canada is now at 40 million population, and as Percy said, aging population, low fertility rates, increasing life expectancies. The government wants to expand their social support base and even drive the economy. That's why Canada is really interested in inviting immigrants into the country. And as Percy mentioned, I think he said, there are 64 immigration streams. So these are just a few of the ones that I picked. They normally come under different categories. There are economic programs, there are family programs, there are programs for refugees and protected persons. So all these are options that are available for person to try. But then the most popular one are the economic programs, and specifically the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which, as Percy mentioned, would apply to most of us here. And under the Federal Skilled Work Program, there are 3 streams. So the umbrella stream is known as Express Entry. Now, Express Entry was introduced in 2015, way of fast-tracking people's immigration applications, because prior to 2015, these were paper-based applications that were taken upwards of 24 months. But Express Entry was introduced in 2015 with a guarantee to process 80% of all applications in 6 months or less. So that has generally been the trend. COVID has thrown things into a bit of a lurch, so we are having processing delays, but then generally speaking, depending on if you're applying within Canada, it's mostly faster than if you're applying outside of Canada. But then that was the whole thinking behind Express Entry. So under Express Entry, we have the Federal Skilled Worker Program. We have the Canadian Experience Class. That is for those who have schooled and graduated from a Canadian university. And then we have the Federal Skilled Trades Program. That is for those who are, skilled trades like plumbers, electricians, mechanics, those who have been trained with those hands-on skills, or what we would have in Ghana would be like an equivalent would be like polytechnic training, right? Now, the Federal Skilled Worker Program is for skilled workers with foreign work experience and specific education and language abilities, right? And it's a points-based system on a 100-point grid that is used to assess your eligibility. And once you are able to pass 67 points, you are then eligible to apply for any one of these federal programs, or for these immigration programs. But specifically for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which I'm talking about, the pass mark is 67 points. Now, what happens under the Federal Skilled Worker Program? You should have skilled work experience. Percy touched on this in certain specific, what is known as National Occupational Classification Groups. And there are different, what we call tiers, TERs. From tier 0 to tier 3 are the occupational groups which apply. So you have the definitions there. Tier 0 is for management occupations. Tier 1 is for occupations that usually require a university degree. And then 2 and 3 are mostly require a college diploma with some amount of, apprenticeship training or on-the-job training. So before you, as part of assessing your eligibility for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you would need to identify which of these groups that your occupation falls in, and then to determine whether you are eligible. This is focused specifically on skilled work. So if your occupation does not fall into any of these tiers, then you are not eligible right off the bat. And then you need at least 1 year experience within the last 10 years before you apply to be considered eligible. But the more years that you have, the better your chances of being selected. Now, what happens is that you are going to create a profile, and that profile is going to assess you based on your demographics. and your, specific things like, okay, how many years of work experience do you have? What is your level of education? What is your language capabilities? Have you taken the language test? What are your scores? And so many other things. And it's going to come together with a composite score that is known as a comprehensive ranking score. This is different from the eligibility score on the 0 to 100 point grid. This comprehensive ranking score is from a scale of 0 to 1,200. And having a job offer before applying for this program automatically gives you 600 points. But that is also like one of the, it's not easy to get. It's happened like far and few times between. So most of the times you are seeing people competing on the 0 to 600, 700 point range. Now, there have been certain changes to this program. And the thing about Canadian immigration is that it is very dynamic and it changes like quite frequently. So back in 2015, when it was begun to now, several changes have occurred. I think on the average, maybe about every 6 months, every 5 to 6 months, you have certain changes that are coming in or certain modifications that are presented through the program. And the latest one is that now there are category-specific selections that are being done. Previously, anyone and in any skilled occupation can apply to this federal skilled worker program, but now they are going to specific categories to select individuals for eligibility to apply to this program. So now, currently, for the specific category-specific selections that are happening, these are the main groupings, or these are the target groupings for which people who are within these occupations are being targeted. So French language proficiency is become a huge thing. I'm going to come back to that specifically. And then we have healthcare, STEM, trade, transport, and agric. So if your occupation falls within some of these categories, then you stand a higher chance of being selected through the skills. Now, I know that Percy had mentioned also about the age, right? And about how there seems to be like the sweet spot, which gives you the most advantage in terms of this federal skilled worker stream. And that's true. The points, it's kind of like a, how do you call that? It's like a bell-shaped curve. As you grow older, 20s, your early 20s, the number of points that you can get for your age increases till it reaches the apex at, I think it's 29 or 30, and then it starts to come down. So the older you are above 30, the more chances or the more points that you lose. So if you are, let's say, 38 years old, you lose 5 points for every additional age, or for every additional age that, for every additional increase in age. So if you are 31, you lose 5 points. So if you are 38 years old, and I guess most of us will be between 37 and 40 years old, if you are 38 years old, you've lost 40 points. If you are 40 years old, you've lost about, 50 points there. But what I have been seeing now is that people with French language proficiency are able to make up for that loss in age by having that French language proficiency. Now, these language abilities are determined by writing like language testing exams. So for English, we have the IELTS and we have the CELPIP. For French, we have the TEF and TCF French exams. Now, there is this story that is really amazing of a Nigerian couple that were 44 and 40 years old who were able to come through this federal skilled worker stream. And what did they do? Now, both of them had like master's degrees. So obviously they had like, an advanced degree. Both of them sat for and wrote the IELTS and did like extremely well. And both of them sat for the French language exams too as well, and they did, averagely well. I think they actually specifically went to study French for a year, and they wrote the exams. And at 44 and 40, they were able to get enough points to be selected for the federal skilled worker stream. So do not give up. There is still hope for you if this is a path that you really want to pursue. There are certain things that you can do, such as enhancing or adding French proficiency to your profile to increase your chances of getting selected. So. So as I said, language ability, you must take one of the approved language tests in English or French. You must get a minimum score benchmark, CLB, Canadian Language Benchmark 7 in all 4 abilities of listening, speaking, writing, and reading. And then these tests should be uploaded to your Express Entry profile. And then your education must be assessed if you have a foreign credential. So if you have a degree that is an educational credential that is outside of Canada, then you must do what is known as an EC, an educational credential assessment, specifically for immigration purposes, from one of these designated organizations. So we have WES, which is like the popular one, World Educational Services. We have ICAS, we have ISAS, we have CES, whichever one. And sometimes, depending on your profession, it is advantageous to assess with one organization or the other. For example, if you are like an architect or you are like a lawyer in Ghana, these are like you have like your bachelor's and then you do like a PG dip in architecture, or you do like an LLM, in law. Some of these organizations can assess them as having 2 degrees, which gives you more points. So depending on your occupation, you would want to do your research with these various assessment organizations to know which one is the best for you and is most advantageous for you to give you the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to the educational assessments. And then proof of funds. This is something that Percy touched on, that this is capital intensive, and mostly because of the exchange rate and how terrible it's gotten, right? You should show proof that you have enough money for your family to settle in Canada, and this is not money that the government is taking away from you. You just need to show that you have this money so that in case you are not able to work immediately, you can support your family. And for a single person, you need to show, I think it's about 13,000 Canadian dollars and some coins. And with the exchange rate of it being about 8 cedis, that means that for a single person, you need to show about 100,000 cedis at least. And then as the number of members in your family increases, the proof of funds also increases by like a little margin, maybe about $2,000 or $3,000 per additional person. And then you must also be admissible to Canada, do your criminal checks, all that. And AK touched on this about information sharing between the countries. This is very true. So you do not want to misrepresent, you do not want to present any contradictory information to a country, thinking that you can, sing a different song to each country. Information is shared, and these are part of the admissibility checks and the criminal checks that are done to ensure that you have not misrepresented yourself in an application to another country elsewhere. And so after your profile is created, you enter into a pool with other candidates, and then you are ranked according to a cutoff score that is determined. Now, what the change that I talked about earlier, where now category-based selections are being done, these minimum cutoff scores are still being applied to the categories. So, for example, recently, let's say the first French proficiency category-based selection that was done, the cutoff score was 375 points, which is like really low, and anybody at all who had French proficiency and had that 375 points or higher would have gotten in. For the times when they weren't doing any category-based selections, most of the cutoff points are in the 400s, about 450, 460, 481. I think the last one that was a general selection was 481. So 375 was like a giveaway. And anybody who had French proficiency or was in the pool would have been selected easily, including those who are above like even 40 years old, because they definitely would, they would have been in the 300, in the high 300, mid to high 300 CRS score range. But it's that's what actually I would recommend to anyone, any of us in our contemporaries, I would recommend to you to look at taking that French language proficiency so that you can improve your chances of being selected from the pool, right? And then you need these documentations. So what happens is you enter into the pool, depending on your points and the cutoff for the draws, you are then invited to apply for permanent residence, right? So this program is like is a federal skilled work program, but then you are being given a permanent resident visa. So you come straight into the country as a permanent resident if after 5 years you're able to demonstrate physical residency of 3 out of those 5 years. You can apply for a Canadian citizenship and then you are good to go. Now, the thing about the Canadian process compared to the US, that the US is complex, as AK said, like it is super complex, and there are very few, I should say that there are very few immigration things that you do without the need of a lawyer. But in Canada, it's more DIY. Most people do their Canadian applications by themselves without the need for any immigration lawyer, unless there is some complex issue or there is some issue that is like really complex. But everything, all the information is online. It is mostly a 100% do-it-yourself process. Like most of the people that I know who have come through this process did it themselves, right? You just need to follow the guidelines, follow the documentation, get the required documentation and the proof that you need, and then you put in your application, and it's more or less like unless you've done some misrepresentation or you've done something funny in your past, it's almost like a 99.9% chance guarantee that you are going to be approved. And so you can start out by filling some eligibility questions. It's going to create like a code for you. And I mean, there are ways by which you can kind of project the scores or the points that you are going to get with your profile. So if you pick that CRS, or if you pick this tool, you are able to input in your age, your work experience, your educational level. You are able to input in maybe like dummy language ability scores to help you determine that, oh, if I take the IELTS and I do well, let's say I get these scores in the various 4 areas, these are the points that I get. If I additionally go and take French and I am able to get these scores, these are the points that I get. It helps you to kind of project to see where you stand, and even if you stand a chance at all. But then one thing that I always tell people is that if there's something that you are interested in, the principal and the most important thing is to get into the pool, create your profile, write your English and French, and get your educational credentials evaluated and enter into the pool, because different things happen at different places. Like you can be in the pool and the province would express an interest to notify you or an interest to nominate you for permanent residence. So we have the federal level, which is like the government of Canada permanent residence programs, which is like express entry and the other ones. And then we have the provincial, like Percy was talking about. Ontario has their program, Prince Edward has their program, Prince Edward Island has their program, Saskatchewan, Alberta, all these different provinces have their individual programs, and they pick candidates from the express entry pool depending on your profile. So although you might not be readily or immediately eligible for selection into the federal program, it is possible that a province can reach out to you. And I know people who have recently been nominated by the province, and they are having their permanent residence applications process. So I just tell people that if there's something that you are interested in, the most important thing is to get into the pool, right? Don't be looking at the scores thinking that, oh, I will apply when it comes down. You never know what could happen. During the pandemic, there were times where the government said that, you know what, we are inviting everyone in the pool. So they lowered the cutoff points to 75 for the Canadian experience class. That's people who had graduated from a Canadian institution and were in Canada. 75, they reduced it. They invited about literally 25,000 or 30,000. Everybody who was in the pool got an invitation to apply for permanent residence. So the most important thing is to be in the pool. So basically, that is at a high level is how this program works. I can share this presentation afterward, and you have all these hyperlinks in the presentation that would lead you to the specific pages where you can get more information about how the program works, your eligibility, and all these other useful pieces of information. So thank you very much. I will hand it over back to Ajua to take it out from here.
Okay. It's been a very, very interesting meeting we've had this afternoon. I've spent quite a lot of time just admitting people in. We apologize for the glitch, the initial glitch, and I'm happy we're able to catch everybody that was trying to reach us. We will use the final 30 minutes to take questions, and then we can conclude this matter on a very happy note. Everything that is has been shared with us, I will also share with everybody so that we can all take our time and read it. And I would like to ask Mr. Folson and then Mr. Percy, people have expressed that they want to have a one-on-one with you. I know your time is not, the time is not available. But please let me know, send me a personal message how you would want me to treat this matter. Also, my little sister, AK Poku, people are asking to reach out to you. Please let me know what I have to do, because I know that, you are very busy people. So please, let's take questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll call you and then we can answer it off. Okay, Gertrude Kumi, I'll get right to it. Gertrude Kumi, your hand is up, please.
Yes, please. Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in the US and I need to ask a question. So my spouse has an approved EB2 for the green card, and of course we have to wait for the priority dates, which is God knows when it's going to come. So whilst waiting, can we file for? I'm on an H4 visa at the moment. Can I file for an EAD whilst waiting? Whilst waiting for adjustment of status, like when the priority date is current.
Okay, so AK, I hope you've noted that question. I'm going to Joshua. Joshua, please ask your question and then we can answer them in groups.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening,
my
sir.
question is, I want to ask AK first, Opoku, that from what she was saying, assuming you have applied to U.S. Embassy earlier with an information that you think another time you are coming out with different information. From what she was saying, it means that you are not supposed to apply again because they have all those information you presented earlier, such that they can use those information against you. Yes, we have that information that over time they clear their system. So I was told 2 years after US cleared their system of all those presentations. So in case you have those information that you think they are not right to be presented and later you want to present a different thing, can you continue to present those information or you should not do it at all? That's what I want to know.
Okay, so AK, this is also going in your direction. I'll take 2 more questions. I hope they are in the American line. Femi and Karen, then AK can answer those questions and then we'll move on to the next 4 till it's 6 p.m. Femi, please ask your question.
Thank you. My question is about the Canadian, not about the US. Can I also ask the question?
Okay. So Dr. Percy and Mr. Folsom, please pick up this question for when we are answering Canadian questions. Femi, please carry on.
All right, thank you. My question is, if someone comes to Canada as a visitor, I'm aware that Canada says you can come as a visitor and later change your visitor's visa to work permit or to what's it called, to student or whatsoever. So what is the chance or is there anything someone can do with a visitor's visa in Canada to be converted into a work permit in Canada as well? Thank you.
Right. Okay. So Karen, I'll take your Intakuti, I'll take your question and then we can have AK answer the questions, please. This is the 4th question.
So I think I put my question in the chat, but I can say it again.
Okay, yes.
So I wanted to know, AK, you mentioned that you could retrieve information on your visa once you've done applications to the U.S. Embassy. I would like to know how you can do that if it's possible. The second is to ask, so I mean, I'm using an example. You've been given a 5-year US visa. You've traveled with that for a period of time, but the last year of the visa, that's the last year when the visa is expiring, you travel, and so if, for instance, the visa is expiring in July, you traveled in May, and you're usually given a stamp when you're entering the US. That states that you can stay beyond 6 months with a stamp. So if your visa expires in July, but the stamp that has been issued states that you can leave the US by October, and you leave the US in August, have you overstayed? And if you are reapplying, how do you explain that in your new application? Like, you don't really have a reason, but the reason is because you looked at what the stamp had to offer. I want to know if the stamp overrides the visa.
Okay, so AK, Mepacho, you have 3 questions in your lane.
There's another one. If, for instance, you have a case that has been expunged in the US, do you necessarily have to state it in your visa application?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start
with
the first person. She says she has an H4 visa, so that means her spouse likely has an H1B visa, and she's the dependent of that, and so she has an H4. Now, yeah, I believe this rule was changed recently, but previously, if you were the spouse of an H1B visa, you could not apply for a work permit while you were here. But now the law allows.
Oh,
now the law allows that dependent.
Let me mute that very quickly. Hold on. Carry on, AK.
But now the law allows you to apply as a dependent spouse, and there are calculations. There are calculations as to when you can actually file your work permit application as an H4. So please contact me, and then we can take a look. I can't tell you without knowing the numbers and how many days, whether your husband is on the second H1B extension or all those things. So
he's on the second one.
You can apply for a work permit, but I will not be able to give you a definitive answer now. So with the second question about, you've applied previously, you put in some information and you're applying again and you are not sure. So for example, what happens is that some agents file applications, right? And you'll be surprised to know the agents sometimes manufacture or fabricate even the name of your mother, the name of your father, their date of birth. You're a human being, you can only have one mother. So if on one occasion your mom's name is Abena Yeboah by an agent who just put it in there just to get you the visa, and then it happened to be denied, and now you're applying and you're using your real mother's name, which is maybe Ya Kunedu. Obviously, that's a big problem, right? Because you can have there's some information that can only be once. And in order to be able to give you an answer as to whether you should apply using the same information or what you should do, I will not be able to answer that question outside of a context, because I need to, first of all, so what we need to do first of all is pull up your records, and then we analyze them to see where, what answer did you give that was incorrect, and how do we resolve that moving forward, right? Because it depends on what they put there. Sometimes some people work in certain agencies, like maybe a governmental agencies, there's some connection that happens, like, even in the chieftaincy, they are traveling to do a program, and then friends or cousins of the chief, is able to get an opportunity to travel. An agent will take all the documents and apply for the visa. And sometimes even the attorneys general, some governmental agency, those type of diplomatic visas, they don't go for an interview. The agent or whoever is doing the connection will fill out everything or do everything and then submit it on behalf of the employees or the people going. So in such situations, you don't know what they submitted, and it's just very hard to tell you, do it this way, without knowing, first of all, pulling up the records to see where the discrepancies or inconsistencies are, and then how to address those moving forward. So that's the first step. And then I think there was the last question. Okay, somebody asked about if you're coming in and your visa expires, let's say in a month's time, and you're given an I-94 or the stamp is for 6 months. So now a visa, guys, remember, a U.S. visa, any U.S. visa, it's only to allow you admission, right? It's to allow you to come to a port of entry to seek admission. It does not guarantee you entry. I believe this cuts across many countries. The visa doesn't mean you have authority to step into the country. It's only permission to get to a port of entry, like an international airport, and then ask the CBP, can I get inside? That's why they do a primary inspection and they do a secondary inspection. So the primary inspection obviously is to make sure you are actually clearly admissible. Now, even if you have 1 day, or in fact, if you have 30 seconds for your US visa to expire, you can validly come to a port of entry and seek admission into the United States. Now, what regulates the period of your authorized stay is not your visa. It is your I-94, your record of departure or arrival. That is what regulates it. So the I-94 is always what overrides the visa. So if you have even 10 minutes, you can run, fly and then get in, and then, just ask them, can I get entry? And then 10 minutes for your, at that time, let's say you have 8 more minutes for your visa to expire, theoretically, right? And so they give you buying 6 months, so you can stay until you can be in the US with an expired visa. That's not what's going to regulate the period of your stay.
Okay, so we'll move on to let me let me pick a few more questions. Femi, I've
Oh,
done.
I'm sorry, I
Carol.
didn't answer one question. There was another question. Somebody also asked, I think, I don't know who, but how do you pull up the records? That's a legal process. I can't teach you how to pull up your immigration records. So depending on which interaction you've had with which U.S. governmental agency, so you can have an interaction with the U.S. Embassy, which is under the U.S. Department of State. You can have interactions with the CBP, that Custom and Border Protection of the U.S. That's when you are trying to enter into the U.S. at an international airport. You can have interactions with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, with OBIM, Office of Biometric Identification, just EOI, or Executive Office of the Immigration Review, that's Immigration Court. So depending on where you've had your interaction with any U.S. immigration, we file the request of the records with the appropriate agency. So that's a legal process that I will not be able to teach you. If you need help, contact me, I will be able to help you. And then there was another question that person asked about if your records are expunged. So listen, generally speaking, an expungement has it has no legal effect on a U.S. immigration application. If you commit a crime and the records are expunged, even when you're applying for U.S. citizenship, they'll tell you, regardless of whether your records have been expunged or not, which crimes have you ever been convicted for? So, if you have been rendered inadmissible because you have committed a crime, contact me, and then I can take a look at what's happening and then be able to help you. But generally, an expungement has no legal consequence for a U.S. immigration application.
Okay, AK, please let me know how you want people to contact you. Okay, I beg you, share with them. So Auntie B will share with me, and then I'll send it to everybody else. Okay, so let's take the next set of questions. Kuntun Kununku, please, can we hear from you, please? Okay, Jonathan,
Hello?
can we hear from you? Yes, please. Okay, Kuntun Kununku, we got you. Please, what's your question, sir?
Yeah, so my regard is it's with the express entry.
Canada, okay.
Yeah, Canada. So I'm a single man, 25 years and above. I work in the hospitality industry. I earn a little. My salary is quite good. In a high position. How do I apply? I'm sure I did not pay attention when he was maybe giving the application process earlier on. So I want him to reiterate on it again so I can.
All right. Jonathan, please, can we hear from you, please?
Yes, thank you. Mine has to do with the Canada, either the visitor or the conference visa. So let's say I have the conference visa for 10 years. I have MBA. If I get in, I don't know anybody there. Is it possible to get a work for maybe the first 1 month so that I can switch to a work visa or something? How possible is it? What's the probability with it?
Okay. Atrefua Tilly, please, can I hear from you, please? I hope it's the Canadian question, so that will be 4 Canadian questions.
Yeah, the Canadian question.
Atrefua, please, we are listening.
Yeah, okay. So I want to find out. I have a sister over there.
Over where?
And also in Canada.
Perfect. Carry on.
And we also have a family of 6 that wants to visit. So, you know whether we should use the visiting visa as a
Please come closer to your mic.
Yeah, I have a Canadian.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Hello?
Going to visit her or a tour visa, which one? And also, I have a brother who's also want to do his PhD, but he doesn't know anybody over there. He's a colleague of mine. He doesn't have anybody over there. How does he apply throughout the process? What's the way forward for him?
All right. So, Dr. Kosa and Mr. Folsom, please, you have 4 questions about the Canadian environment. Please, if you can clear them.
Yes, are you still on?
Okay. Yes, I was looking for my mic. It's fine. Let me quickly put this out there first, okay? I mean, with all due respect, there's a very laid-back nature of Ghanaians in the past, okay? And usually I like to push the mindset that with immigration, anyone ready for a change should be ready to push yourself beyond your limit. I'd said something earlier that the white man respects you when you are able to justify that you're a higher breed or you're different from the rest. So anyone with a mindset to change, be ready to go through hell to make it, right? We all had our own encounters. So I had one person asking about, or one or two people say, we don't know nobody. With honestly, nobody cares. It's not about who you know here. It's about what you have, right? So first thing is, this is my line of work. I am example, a doctor. Like, let me use my wife as an example. My wife is an architect from Ghana. And the process to become an architect here was so tedious. It's minimum 7 years for her to be able to bring her background and skills. She was building homes and everything was okay. To be able to earn the same thing as an architect, it's going to take her about 7 years. I have friends who are doctors, the same process. So would she stay forever crying and whining? No, we found our own way around the system. So though her skill set was primarily buildings, we had to start our own business, do a couple of things. And eventually we're buying and building our own houses with the same skill, but she won't have the Canadian license as an architect. But if you're a builder now, who cares? And the money won't drop from the sky. You have to start from somewhere. So if it means that you're coming in as a doctor and you have to be a shop operator for a year, you have to be a driver for a year. Like, driving is key here. North America makes money from transportation. So public transit is terrible. So anybody coming, make sure that you have the valid Ghanaian driver's license and your card. A lot of people have come with renewal, the photocopy, nobody will take it. The moment you have that, you're able to target remote jobs. I just told you, one of my friends who came, the siblings, one took a job on a wheat farm, I'm not kidding you. And it's not about wanting to deal in wheat, this is the best joke, but it's because that farm is remote, nobody wants to go there. And so with that process, okay, he is originally in accounting, but he's put his accounting down to do farming. A lot of people are going into healthcare, personal support worker. Like, we even have our own healthcare business, right? So put away that mindset. Nobody's going to hold your hand and baby you. Okay, so if it's putting 1,000 applications out in your first year, you have to. And the moment you make it, you proceed, right? So that's the background mindset I need you all to have. Like the visitor visa thing I talked about, it wasn't legal. It was an amendment during the pandemic so that anyone with a visitor's visa will not be stuck at home, not making money. So they only did that switch, and it's still valid until the year 2025. That's the good thing. So that law is in place until 2025. So anyone with a visitor's visa today can transition until 2025. And it's either you're finding the job on your own through the links I mentioned, jobbound.ca, indeed.ca, or they're actually communities, as I said, Indians, they're putting together their own job and selling out the job offers. But what is important is you are applying and you're using that to transition. Doesn't matter what kind of job, once it's legal, right? In the presentation, Folsom will share as well, you have the link telling you how to handle the express entry, because someone had asked about it, right? And we said it. You pretty much, I talk to a lot of people, go and write IELTS and they'll ask if there's a way they can pay. No. You cannot pay for everything to be done. So it's the last thing I honestly want to hear from, oh, can I buy my way through? No. You book British Council, IELTS, we all speak really good English, but people don't follow the instructions. And there are so many instructional videos on YouTubes and all the different media streaming channels. You don't need to buy any books. And you're writing to blow. You get minimum 8 in listening, minimum 7.5 in everything else, right? And then with your IELTS, those of you who are French, you're adding French as a language. If both spouses have to do it, great. There's the option where you can add your spouse, but not, you put in there, you're not traveling with your spouse to boost your points, right? So these are things that we can talk about in the background, but the slides have all the information. So before anyone would try to follow up, there's so much in there. When you get it, go through and be ready to go write your exam, be ready to convert your credentials. It's not going to be easy and smooth, but if you put in the effort, trust me, you would get what you want, because it's a legal pathway. They need the people. It's $1 billion industry for the country, right? So imagine going to pay $300 for IELTS, $300 for results conversion. If 100,000 people do this in a month, look how much money they're getting, right? So for those who are serious, look at it. Folsom put all the information in there. And I think I addressed every question that was raised for the Canadians. So we can go on to the
some
next
others
panel.
that I can also.
All right, so Colton, top it up for us, please.
Yeah, so someone asked the conference visa. So we don't have a specific like conference visa. It's a visitor visa that you would be granted for you to come and attend a conference here. Someone also said, you have a sister in Canada. How do you visit? You have to apply for a visitor visa. All these can be done online at the cost of, I think it's $100 for the application, and then you pay for your biometrics, and you can literally submit the application for less than $200. And then someone said his brother wants to do his PhD, but he doesn't know anyone. As Percy said, you do not need to know anyone. You just need to know the right procedure to go through. So quickly, what you have to do is you need to know what area that you want to do your PhD in. You need to go online, go to Google, and find schools in Canada that are offering that program. You need to look for faculty who are in that program and are doing research. And most of the time, they have funding for research. You need to reach out to the faculty, send them a nice cold email, tell them this is what you want to do. You are interested in conducting research in this area. And if they are willing to take you on as a student in their research group or in their lab, and that is mostly how you can get to do your PhD for free, which happens like 99% of the time. Like PhDs come with funding, so you need to go through the process. Like there's lots of information online, YouTube, about how to go through all this process step by step. So you do not need to know anyone. You just need to know how to do and take actions, right? So, and then also converting the visitor visa to work permit in Canada. Yes, the government has said they've extended it to 2025, but the truth is that it's not an easy process. Like it's a hard process, but there are certain specific resources that will show you who is hiring foreigners, with visitor visa, because the challenge is that we want to convert a visitor visa to a work permit. There's a document known as an LMIA, a labor market impact assessment, as AK had touched on for the US. You need to prove that hiring this person will not impact the labor market for Canadians. So that sometimes proves to be the challenge. But then there's information about companies that have LMIAs approved and they are hiring for different kinds of roles. As Percy said, someone is an accountant, they came to work on a farm, and you realize that a lot of these roles are available in the agric industry, right? Agric industry, fishery industry, general labor. You have these opportunities there that, if you don't mind, you will do like a targeted search there, and your chances of getting it should be much better than just spray and pray. Like people come here for 6 months, they are not able to get a job because it's just like a tough process unless you know where to look and the specific resources to use. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Clef, and I have one anonymous question. So Clef, can you ask your question, and then I will add my question, and then we'll bring the meeting to a close.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, please, I wanted to ask, I applied for a US visa, but I used a company's account as a financial statement, but I was denied, like they declined it, and I'm planning on reapplying, but I want to use a loan as a financial statement. I wanted to know if that would be possible.
Okay, so I also have a question. I think it's about the US. Let me check for it. Okay, so embedded in a minute. All right. Okay. If a grandparent was a US citizen and the parent is also a US citizen, but did not live there, the parent did not live there, is there a way of getting a visa through ancestry? Is there a way of getting a visa through ancestry? These are our last two questions on the series, and it's to be handled by AK.
Okay, so with regards to you applied for a student visa and a company was going to fund your studies, but it was denied, and you have a loan now. So guys, I remember I told you, once you get denied for a US visa, unfortunately it goes on your record, and it's very, very, very difficult to overcome that denial next time. You can certainly overcome it, but the problem is that once you've previously been denied, any subsequent visa officer, they go into a default denial mode unless you are able to overcome the basis of the denial that presented itself in the previous application. So you really have to, and I see people do this mistake all the time. They get denied and they do back-to-back reapplications. It's not a lottery. It's not like, oh, the more you apply, the higher your chances. You can be applying and be misapplying and missing the target each time. So rather than rushing to reapply, you really need to review everything and evaluate, determine why the denial was. Take your time, re-strategize, and then you can come back stronger. Because at a point, they just take you for granted. You just keep reapplying. They just keep denying. Even though this is an F1, the refusal rate, I believe the last statistics that the U.S. Department of State released was for Ghana, a B2 visa, a denial of about between 60 to 70%. So they are denying more people than they are issuing visas. And unlike Mr. Kosa and Mr. Folson's Canada, as for the US, see them as like they are really bluffing because they know that they have the numbers and they don't care. They don't want people here. They don't make that hidden. Unlike the Canada, where they are calling everybody to come. The US, they're just overwhelmed, and the system is now even broken. Like there's just a huge backlog, and they don't care. They're just turning people away. They don't need more people here, unfortunately. So you just have to re-strategize and then come back, determine why it was denied, and then try to address it. Don't rush to reapply because you might just end up in another denial. The other thing I want to say is that let me touch on this. So for the US, there's really a shortage also. Like employers cannot even find people to do the jobs because the US citizens and they are just really pampered and spoiled. People can get unemployment benefits. They are not rushing to work. They don't want the hard jobs. They just want, a lot of people they just don't want the job. So people are finding it really, really hard to fill these positions. Unfortunately, the US doesn't really care because instead of making the process easier for immigrants who want to come and do the work, they've made it tougher. They just don't want people to come in. So if you are looking for a job, you have to find the employers by yourself. You have to contact agencies, Google them on different type of organizations and agencies who employ people. And the sad part is that even though you may contact them, many of these organizations don't want to get involved because the process is expensive and it's very lengthy. So they prefer to just try to hire people in there. So it just makes it really difficult for people to come in, but it's still possible to get, and I believe for Canada, they also mentioned Indeed. Indeed, same thing here. You can use Indeed and then just really Google the field of work you want to be in and look for jobs and then try to reach out to them. And then was there another question?
That if somebody grandfather was a citizen, but the dad was a citizen as well, but didn't live there, can you claim on ancestry?
Okay. So I believe those ancestry rules are for the UK. So for the United States, there are 4 ways generally to become a US citizen. Number 1 is through automatic acquisition. If you are born here, you are automatically a US citizen, or if your mother is a US citizen or if father is a US citizen, you can derive it through descent. Then the second way is through something known as derivation. The process of derivation, which I believe may be what the person is asking. So if your father was born, if your father becomes a US citizen or he naturalizes, so let's say your father is a Ghanaian, and then down the line he naturalized, he became a US citizen after he turned 18. Once you are a foreign national, so if your father became a US citizen before you, the child, turned 18 years old, you can get citizenship through a process known as derivation. And that's what we use the CRB or CRIBA process for, consular report of birth abroad. For those people, you were born after your father became a U.S. citizen. So you derive it, but you have to file an application to show you derive it. Now, in order to derive it under this, your father has to meet what, the 5-year physical presence rule. 2 of those years have to be after the age of 14. If your father is unable to meet the physical presence rule, they can trace the physical presence, or you can establish the physical presence through your grandfather, who has to show that he had physical presence that was before you were born. And then obviously we have the other route of naturalization. After you turn 18 years old, you are a foreign national, and then you apply for citizenship. So with the tracing citizenship through your father or your mother or your grandfather, it's under the process of derivation. And depending on where the child is the child can be based outside the US or here in the US. There are different types of applications to file. So US citizenship is very complex. Also, we have to calculate there are some periods during which people were born which use specific laws. Those laws have been amended. So depending on the time you were born, they come with those rules. So yeah, but generally ancestry doesn't work here. It's through the process of derivation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. It's because of you this program has been such a huge success. I know some people have joined who are friends and family of MOBA-Gey 2003 and U.S.A 2004. We have sent the details onto our various class pages. Please contact your friends on these pages and then pick the information up from them. Mr. Folsom and Mr. Kosa, please, we won't flood. So if there's a way we can contact you calmly, please let us know, and then we'll share with our friends and family who are with us here today.
Well,
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
So my final word would be that if you are looking to contact me, I've sent my office line to Ms. Boatema. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do free consultations. I run a law firm here, so
absolutely
it's not something I can do. However, if you are looking for free, our social media pages, I share free content all the time, Poku Law, across our social media pages. That's where you can get free help. Now, if you're contacting the office, please note that all appointments are paid. Thank you.
Yes, please. Our subject matter experts are running a business. Okay, so as I said, their time and their resources is something that, if we are really interested and really serious, as Percy was saying, Dr. Kosa was saying, you are really wild, then you should commit to yourself to it and commit yourself to it properly. We hope that from everything that we've heard from these briefings that they've given us, we can pick out the salient points and be able to do what we need to do. But if we need extra help and we need to contact them, please, let's also do the needful and respect their the work that they do. So we will share what they have shared with us. And if you are friends with any of the people that have come together to make this program a success, just contact anybody. Me, I know my friends are here, just contact anybody and then we'll give you the details that they shared. I wish everybody the best. I pray that 1 year from now, 2 years from now, we'll all meet in Canada because, hey, we all meet. We thank God for the information that we've received. It will help us to evaluate ourselves first, and then not make irrational decisions. We will do what we know we were told to do and what is the correct thing. We've been asked to be careful of third parties. Third parties may be putting up information about us out there that is inaccurate or may affect the day that we are actually trying to do a legit submission. I thank you so much. I started with an opening prayer, so I'll end with an opening prayer as well. Dr. Kosa, thank you so much. Our husband, God bless you. Mr. Folsom, hey, we'll worry you on the page, oh. Now that you've brought your head out, we didn't even know. So get ready for a backdoor adventure. We thank you so much. AK, oh, I'm so proud. You are just delivering the message. The sisterhood is so proud of you and what you are doing and being able to set yourself up on on such a unique space. You'll be hearing from us. Everybody will start with, I heard you speaking on the, this page and everything, and I would want you to sort me out. I'm so happy that we've been able to bring this meeting to a close successfully, and so many people. There was a point we had 202 participants. And then next week we have a talk on our health. Every year we do a talk on health, because I know that from our last talk on health up to this talk on health, some of you have still not even gone for a checkup. So we are going to remind you of all the salient health activities that you should have carried on within this year. And if you have not done it, you have to do it again. We'll have Dr. Catherine Atto and Dr. Kato Addison coming to take us through that session. And please be reminded that we'll be having our Thanksgiving and lunch. We'll be putting out the details there. We are hoping to do something very nice and very, controlled and everything. So we'll be putting out the details there. Yes, the recording, as I said, the recording will be available. Whoever that you heard this message from, whoever you received the invitation from, contact that person, and then that person will hand it to you. But we'll send it to all the pages. We'll send it to 2004, 2003, MOBA-Gey 2003. We'll send it to all those pages, and then you can pick it up. There's one last thing that I'll say though. Our subject matter experts told us that what they are telling us is not legal counsel. It is, how do I call it? High-end advice. So please, very, very high-end advice. So please, if in case you are relating the message to somebody, it is a family that came together to advise itself with our sisters and our brothers who are in that position. So please, when you are sending the message, you are sharing with somebody, share it within the actual context that exists. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll end this with a prayer. Father, Lord, in the name of Jesus, we thank you so much for this meeting. We thank you for our facilitators. We thank you for the information received. We pray especially for the determination we feel in our hearts to change our situation. We pray that you toughen us, you give us grace. You give us grace. Whatever rules and regulations that may exist, we know that you are a king that can speak to the heart of the king. And for any of us that will start on this journey, if we reach safely, we will give all the glory, adoration to your name. We thank you. We thank you for our lives. We pray for a successful week. We pray for successful applications all across board. And we pray that everything that we touch with our hands will be a blessing to us and to our family. This we pray through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Thank you, everybody. God bless you. God bless you. Please contact the person you heard about the event. Contact that person, and every information that we'll have will be sent to that person, and the person will send it to you as well. It's trickling down. So just wait for it and you receive it. We still have 6 people joining us when the meeting is closing. Thank you so much, team. God bless you. Bye. AK, I'll call. Okay, I have to say a personal thank you. God bless you. Dr. Kosa, if I come to Canada, I'm coming to live in your house first, in the first 1 month. Mr. Folston, God bless you. I'm so glad that we found you. You are just right there on our page. God bless you. Good night, everybody. God bless you. Have a lovely week. Good night, everybody. If you can unmute yourself, please let's share a few parting words. Thank you so much. Amansia, you are sharper than a double-edged sword. Thank you so much. God bless you. Saying, Benjamin, Ghana for who?
Bye.
Bye.
Beautiful.